Okay, so I'm here with Derek Rose from Maui. Derek reached out to me on Twitter a few days ago, probably last week, I think, just saying,
Mhm.
there's a lot of shit going on here in Maui. Things are not adding up. It seems like there's a cover up going on of some type. We're not exactly sure what, and I just want to get the word out. So I wanted to, the way I tell a story is with a camera. So I was trying to get just like a short doc put together. I reached out to some people. These things do take some time to actually put together. So I figured, you know what? Let's just do a Zoom call. I'm not a podcaster type. I don't really
Neither.
like, yeah, I don't like talking on camera. I don't like speaking on camera. Prefer to be behind the camera, but I figured this is an important story because it affects every one of us, not just the wonderful people in Maui. So yeah, I figured let's have this call and let's just have a talk, and you can tell me what you see happening on the ground there and what's so concerning about it. So why don't you start off with if you just want to introduce yourself and maybe talk about what happened on the day that the fires really blew out of proportion.
So for clarity, like I don't live in Lahaina. I live on the other side of Maui. I live in Haiku, which is kind of the wetter side. Typically, this year hasn't been so wet. Um, I've been here or back here for about a year, but my wife lived here for about a decade. Met me in 2014 in Canada, and I became a refugee. Came back to or moved to the U.S. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah, we got that in common, don't we? I last lived in BC in Canada 3 years ago, and with all the COVID nonsense, I moved to Mexico. This is where I am right now,
Good
and
to be out.
yeah, set what's happening to Canada. I think later we're going to talk a little bit about that as well because I think it relates. But anyway, keep going.
So I moved back. I was living on Maui since 2018. I left at the beginning of COVID, and I moved back last August. And I've been here for a year. And so the day of the fires, I was safe, thank God, with my kids. And it was windy, and we were like, we plug out, at night we turn our Wi-Fi off and don't have any calls. And we were mostly concerned about the Kula fires because you could see them from here. You could see Haleakala, the mountain, from Haiku, and it was pretty windy. And you just knew that there was no helicopters that were going to be able to do anything about it. So when we went to bed that night, we were like, okay, this might be bad in Kula, but had no context of anything going on in Lahaina. And then I woke up the next morning and, I didn't turn my phone on until like 11 o'clock. My wife and I have been trying to unplug. And by 11 o'clock, I had friends being like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. What's going on? And they're like, Lahaina's gone. And I'm like,
Wow.
what? It's probably overblown. It's the media every time. It's overblown. So, so I reached out to our church and I'm like calling and calling and calling, and nobody's answering. It's dead. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. And then I'm getting some footage coming in. And I'm like, oh man. I'm seeing videos. I'm seeing and hearing from friends, and I'm like, okay, this isn't overblown. This is actually a big deal. And I guess my media fast ended right there. I was like, I need to know what's going on. I need to be
Yeah.
online. I need to find people that I know and see if there's anything I can do to be useful. So that's kind of the last couple of weeks have been kind of a haze of that. I haven't been on the ground except for like the Friday, 2 days after when they first opened up in Lahaina. So I went out there with a buddy looking for his wife's wedding ring and just went through the rubble. And it looks exactly like you see in the footage. It doesn't look real. It feels like your eyes are lying to you. And the only thing that feels real is like your nose is like, oh my God, this smells so toxic. And I had a headache all day about 30 minutes in. And there's, I was an idiot going out there. Like I didn't have any respirator, and I went in to be with my friend, and we were in over our heads. I was like, dude, this is like super dangerous. I was surprised they let people in. So like I know that there's kind of like a conspiracy of them like trying to keep people out, and I know that's happening. But when they let us in, I was like, it also makes sense that they would keep people out because it's so treacherous out there, or it was at the time. 2 days after, 3 days after. I don't know what it's like now. I don't know what they've cleared, but they have certainly cordoned off that area. So the day of the fire, um, there was no cell phone reception out there. So we didn't hear anything from people that we knew. And
Yeah, I've heard people talk about that, and that's kind of weird. So this is the 8th, right?
this is the 8th.
And
Interesting. It's August 8th, 808,
August
which is our area
August
code,
8th.
just randomly.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. There's a lot of weird coincidences like that, you know. And again, I'm not an expert on this. I just kind of I looked at some videos that you sent me from some other people there on the ground. So so on the 8th, the fire started like it really blew out of proportion, like later on in the day, right? Like around 5 p.m. or something like that.
Around 3 to 4,
Okay,
from my
so it was the
understanding,
afternoon.
is when things went sideways. And when, like, for everybody that was in a house or about to leave, the friends that I've got and spoken to, it's kind of like the power was on, the power was off. They had no reception all day. It was a little bit, gloomy looking. Like there
Right.
was smoke. It was really windy. And, people were having kind of like an at home day. Okay, well, we'll just keep the kids, like the kids, school's not in. We'll keep them at home and just, make the best of it. And then things get a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And they're like, okay, well, maybe we should pack up just in case. And by the time they're packing up, things are getting really bad. And by the time they're walking out the door, they're running out the door and their grass is on fire and they're hauling
Wow.
ass out. So each story, like they're not exaggerating the haste as to what they had to do to get out. Like one wrong turn or one missed
Right.
moment, like it could have been so different. Like in a friend's case, like his wife wanted to go left towards her family, and he was like, "It's the smoke is so bad down there, we can't
Wow.
do it." And they were going to cut right, go up the Lahaina bypass where things were safe, and she wanted to go down to Front Street, where you're hearing about all that stuff in the
Hmm.
media. Just for
Yeah.
context, I mean, for people that don't understand the lay of the land out there, and thank God he won the argument. I mean, he was like, the smoke kills, babe. Like we got to
Hmm.
go, and they made the right turn. If they had made the left, they would have been in that crazy logjam of traffic. And not only that, they could have been stuck because they had the police barriers kind of going northbound towards Kanapali, and it just is so impossible. And I've
Wow.
seen enough footage and I know the area well enough. Like we go there all the time. We go to the beach with our kids, to one of the baby beaches over there, which is safe for the little ones. And like it was impossible. Like just seeing like the people stuck in their cars on their GoPros or whatever they got on their cars. It was so absolutely impossible. People are getting circled, like just running around in circles around Lahaina as things as things are going sideways. They're
Wow.
blocked this way, they're blocked this way.
It's like a
And
kill zone.
that's what I was saying. I was saying it's like a
Yeah.
kill pit, like that.
Right.
And the fire,
A kill
the
box.
things
Yeah.
that made, yeah, the things that made no sense. I mean, the fire just ran down the mountain basically,
Hmm.
and Front Street is right on the harbor, and the
Yeah.
Lahaina Harbor is right there, and they were just basically in a bowl, and there was
So
just a fire that just engulfed everything in that bowl.
the whole day it's like you were saying, like things were gloomy and things were getting pretty bad. Now you're talking about the wind there, or the
I'm talking
fire,
about I'm talking about the smoke.
the smoke.
So
Okay.
so like, and just remember, like I wasn't there,
Right.
but the friends that were there, the
Yeah.
same story applies to almost everybody, and what you're seeing in the media as well, like people's interviews and stuff, which is it's all exactly the same. It's like, oh, things were a little bit weird, no reception, it's
Hmm.
windy, there's smoke, and then the smoke
Right.
it goes sideways. It goes from
Right.
like
Right.
we're seeing smoke up in like a brush fire to like thick black smoke, and by the time they're like, hey, this like it's getting gross, like breathing is difficult. And you and I have both been in BC
Mhm.
fires where it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you were in Williams Lake. I think
Right. Yeah.
I was there at the same time in 2017. Was it the fire?
2017. Yeah, we got evacuated.
Yeah. I've got a
Yeah.
German Shepherd that we bought out there, and we were doing some training. So we drove in, like I think just right after, and I remember just seeing, and there was fires while we were going in, and I mean, you know how uncomfortable that is. And
Hmm.
then take structures with, like, all the plastics and all that kind of stuff and
Yeah.
everything else in all the homes and apartments
Right.
that were starting to go off. People were like, "Oh, we got to go."
Yeah.
So as things went from kind of like white smoke up the hill to thick black smoke and like getting uncomfortable,
Hmm.
it was
Yeah.
like minutes
Right. Yeah.
probably.
It develops very, very quickly. Like under the right
So
conditions, it's very rapid. Now, what I find curious is the fact that the phone lines were down. So why were the phone lines knocked out for the whole day?
I think that and it may be one of those questions that never gets answered, but they've been down, and service had been down since I think like 4:30 in the morning over there. And I think one of the fires or the wind, and there was fires early on,
Right.
but there was also some pretty heavy wind.
Hmm.
And we're probably talking around 60, 70 miles an hour gusts. And I mean, that we can go into the hurricane at some point here, but
Hmm.
I think one of the towers was taken out, and then just cell phone service was super shoddy all day, to the point where like some people had no reception throughout the day at all. And
So even if the sirens did work, I mean, so I guess they have sirens like it's almost like air raid sirens out at, like in the town as well. Then they didn't
yeah,
work, and then
yeah,
of
I've got
course,
one like 100 meters from me here.
and they didn't go off in Lahaina.
They didn't go off at all.
Just a
And
failure. Yeah.
yeah, total failure. And the excuse was that uh, they they're meant for, or they're earmarked for like tsunamis. That's what that guy had said
Yeah.
in that interview that everybody's seen probably nationally. But they're meant for everything. They're meant to warn people for hurricanes, for fires, and
Hmm.
that's what their website says.
Right.
So it
Uh,
doesn't really hold water. And it could have given people at least a fighting chance to say, hey, like there's probably a lot of people that, naturally comfortably stay in their homes, right? It's like, I feel safe here. Just
mhm.
like people probably naturally felt safe in their cars, especially with power lines everywhere. That's
Mhm.
probably why people burned up out of just either like they were complacent in their homes or just comfortable there until it was like too late, or the same with their cars. But as far as the system failures that we just went over there, the cell service was out. So if they tried to get a text message out, which they typically do on this island, like if there's a car accident or if there's a flood warning, you could be anywhere on this island and it's going to say this stream has a major flood
Mhm.
risk because we got heavy rains, and you'll get it on whatever side, if you're in Lahaina or over here. And we didn't get anything over in Haiku. Like I didn't get any warning about any Lahaina fires, and people were still getting let in. Like the upper highway that goes into Lahaina from Kahului, people were still driving in at 3 o'clock,
Wow.
going to get happy hour. It's insane. And so people are driving in there, and hopefully they had the faculties together to be like, I'm not going into that. Like
Right.
that looks insane. But people were driving in, and some of the arguments for the roadblocks
Right.
over on the end of Front Street where it
Mhm.
turns into the Hanoa Pilani Highway
Yeah.
towards Kaanapali to get out. And there's video footage of people being blocked off there. The argument could be that they didn't want to get people in or didn't want to let people in. But even if that is the case, which is very possible, they should have staggered it back towards Kaanapali because you had 4 lanes that people could have got out on,
Yeah.
whereas they had it right at that exit there, and people were all waiting to cut in to hang their left on the highway. So there's traffic here, there's traffic going out of front, there's 2 lanes wide open and 2 cop cars right here. If they got out of the way, people could have just
Yeah.
they could
Wow.
have got those 5, 6, 700 meters out. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
way.
and there's a meme now. I saw this morning starting to go around, and it's based on that AP story saying that those who disobeyed survived.
Oh yeah.
And I think that is valid not just for what happened in Maui. It's just valid in general right now, this day and age,
Oh yeah.
because not only are the authorities they're incompetent, they don't care if you live or die. They don't care. And and you can make the argument that they actually do want to kill you. So with all we've gone through since 2020, I think it's pretty clear, and I think that is something that a lot of people need to take to heart, is those who disobey survive, right? So you see a roadblock, don't be scared of, oh well, it's the cops doing this, it's an authority figure, it's a uniform, whatever.
Yeah.
Disobey, right?
Yeah. I
Because
mean, trust your instincts,
right.
because I and that's been like a huge part. I think we touched on that the first time we spoke, is like, is it malevolence or is it incompetence? And this state here is like, there's so much incompetence that you see in our institutions out here, and that's no different than in Canada or
Mhm.
in the rest of mainland US, but it seems to be like a heightened level of incompetence out here. I think
Right,
there's just
right.
a degree of nepotism that is, I don't know, it's on
Yeah, it's
steroids.
hard to say. I mean, it's sort of it's a constant conversation right now. Like a low grade conversation. Like, is it incompetence? Is it malice? Like when it comes to COVID or any of this stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm just thinking like, okay, with incompetence, you'd think it'd be sort of random, maybe. Like, I understand, the whole thing with nepotism, and you just have people
Yeah.
that are in positions of power. They don't really, they haven't earned the right to be in those positions, and then there's a fallout from that with the incompetence. But one thing that I realized too is if you are somebody who is malicious, you're acting out of malice, then it's a very convenient shield to say, oh, it's just incompetence,
For
right?
sure. And
And that's something that, I'm not saying that it's always going to be malice, but if it is malice, they're going it's in their best interest to say, oh, it was just incompetence, sorry.
mhm.
And that's something to
Don't have a
really
few
be.
fall guys or something like that. It could
Yeah,
just be random officers. It could be incompetence. It could be Hawaiian Electric. I mean, you could go at a
right.
big scale and say that, the companies that own Hawaiian Electric, like BlackRock,
Yep, exactly. I was going to get
Vanguard,
into that. Yeah.
you could say, oh, well, we're going to just sacrifice this company and bankrupt it and just say,
Hmm.
okay, well, they're blah, blah, blah. And then the bigger piece of the pie that they're looking for later. I mean, and that's obviously speculation, but
Yeah.
they could say, just like the chief of police could say, incompetence of the officers, or the governor
Hmm.
could say incompetence of the emergency preparedness,
Right.
guy. And like, you could have that in kind of at every level. And when you
Well,
have this much incompetence,
and and
it's hard to chalk it up to only incompetence.
yeah, it's got to be more than that. Because and the other thing too, because you mentioned the police chief. So this is the guy that was in Las Vegas with that shooting. Like, remember the shooting in Las Vegas?
Yeah, and I
Is it the
haven't
same
gone down the
guy?
rabbit hole. He was the incident commander, as far as I understand. So loosely, and I'm not the investigative guy. I mean, with
Right.
toddlers right now, I haven't had much time, but we're all hearing the same thing, that he was. People are, I think, saying he was the chief over there. I don't think that's true. I think he was the incident commander over there. So he was
Right.
on the
Right.
ground for the event. And I did read one of the mainstream articles saying that, he'd done a bunch of training with the FBI and had
Hmm.
certificates. And I don't know what that means, but
Yeah.
what I
It's something
think,
to look into for sure.
well, what I think is likely in this scenario is we're probably going to get the same type of information that we got out of Vegas, which is
Exactly.
nothing. Which,
Exactly.
if it's the, like, we didn't get much out of Vegas, it's a huge question mark. And I think that Maui could end up falling out of, mainstream news, and
Hmm.
the rest of it will get swept under the rug. And
Right.
that's why, some great people are doing a lot of, just documenting, just getting footage out here to
Yeah.
kind of pick through that footage, like we pick through the rubble, and see what we can find that's relevant for whatever aftermath
Yeah.
is
Well, that's
coming.
a scary thing is like what's going to happen next because it seems like there's there's a lot of signs of a major cover up going on. The other thing too about the police chief, apparently, I just found out last night. I was looking at some videos that you sent over that the police chief is also the
The
coroner.
coroner. Yeah.
That is a
And
big conflict of interest.
it seems to be. And I think that, like, I was talking to my wife about it yesterday, and I know that it would definitely be a conflict because, the police and the prosecution work together. So if the coroner is with them,
Mm-hmm.
like, I can see that being a huge conflict. I haven't thought through what that looks like in a major disaster like this, but I'm sure that it ain't right. At the
Yeah, it
very least,
doesn't
his
smell
hands are
good, right?
no, it doesn't smell good. And at the very least, his hands are full, and he's wearing too many hats for a situation like this.
Right.
Like if that, like at the very least, if there's no
Yeah, it
like
plays into the incompetence angle again, right?
exactly, like why are you wearing that many hats? And
Right.
especially now, why aren't you having somebody else deal with this? You've got
Hmm.
enough on your plate, type
Yeah,
thing. And
yeah. But yeah, it is a conflict of interest because to like if you look at the George Floyd case, right? When George Floyd died, his body was sent, to the chief coroner, I think it's called, and he basically concluded that he did not die due to asphyxiation, but it was because of all the drugs in his system and everything. The
like
family of
fentanyl and
George
stuff
Floyd
like
didn't
that.
like that, so they got another guy to look at him. They got another coroner to look at him, and he gave them the result they wanted.
Oh yeah,
You need somebody who's going to be independent and not, because if you're the chief coroner, but you're also, you're also the head of police, who's watching the watchers, right? Anyway, yeah.
yeah,
So
they're playing the death count too, though. So like if you're the
right,
chief coroner, I mean, and that's the only like I haven't totally thought this through, so total speculation off the
right,
cuff, but it could be downplaying the death count
yeah,
to protect the other hat that you're wearing. Like
exactly,
we were incompetent, but it wasn't like a total
right,
loss or
right.
something like that.
Well, and that's the other thing too. There, this whole story about the missing children, right? There's about like 2,000 missing
It's
children right
it's
now, and it's been like 2, 3 weeks now.
and they haven't done a good job explaining that. And I think that there's huge questions. So everybody's hearing about 3,000 kids in the schools, right, in that area. And they're equating the enrollment of these kids in new schools to, the degree of missing children. I don't think that's accurate, but what I think is happening, I know that there's missing children. And the questions that we got is one, why aren't the parents saying anything? My guess is if you saw those fires and you've probably seen some of the footage of people trying to escape, I'm guessing that parents are running in like you would, like I would. And I think that there's not just missing children. I think that there's missing families.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that that's likely in a lot of situations. Then I also think that the shock that these families are going through, they're just not enrolling their kids in school. Like it's just been so traumatic. And you see these people like, and maybe things have calmed down with them at this point, but seeing them right after, like, they don't know what's what. Like they needed an advocate to kind of do basic tasks. Like they're in shock. Like they some of them, like I know a guy literally got out of his car with his two kids and hoofed it out of the fire. He left his car with his two kids. You imagine like holding your two kids with your wife and running for your life. Like,
Wow.
and like I don't even know what to say. Like I'm so glad that I wasn't there. And so grateful that my kids didn't have to see that because the amount of trauma that
Yeah.
they've all gone through. But
Right.
that going back to why there might be missing kids, it's I can imagine people are just like kind of in shock and trying to just get their basics done. And going to school right now doesn't like it's not a high priority. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah, no. When we first talked, you had mentioned, what kind of happened there. So a bunch of kids were in school, right? Because the school year starts a lot earlier in Hawaii, or
yeah,
something.
and so they were supposed to have school that day, and I guess they were having an at-home day, and I still haven't gotten to the bottom um, of that whole story, but what I do understand is they had they evacuated earlier because there was an early morning fire, and there was smoke, there's wind, there's all this stuff, and parents are just getting their bearings with the new school year. And we had talked about that. It's like, I don't have my kids in school, but I can only imagine if I had to commute to work and I got to commute to get my kids to school. I'm just running around and it's chaos. It's like,
Yeah.
like fighting raccoons to kind of get all that done in the morning with kids. And I'm guessing that a lot of parents, I mean, we generally feel relatively safe in Hawaii, so they go to work,
Hmm.
they drop their kids off, they go to work,
Yeah.
or it's they evacuate the school buses take them home. And I don't know if that's exactly what happened on the
Mm.
ground, but then they're calling the fire contained, and people equate contained with completely out,
Right.
which isn't the case. So
And these
then they
kids are
have,
home alone.
yeah, and they have a level of complacency there. They're like, okay, well, they're at home, everything's fine, but there's no reception. And I don't know how, 6, 7 year olds, 10 year olds, or whatever age these kids are,
Yeah.
what kind of communication they have with their parents, if they have phones or not. But um, then things kind of escalate through the day. And then you've got a parent that's, I don't know, like half an hour away of driving, but they might be in Kaanapali, they might be in Kahului on the other side.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that the situation where people were in Kaanapali and they could see how bad things were getting, that if I was a parent, I'd be booking it out. You can see the smoke, you're like, I'm going. If
Hmm.
you're in Kahului, you would have no idea. It's kind of like being on another island because of
Right.
those mountains. Like, you
Right. So
can't,
yeah,
when you cut around, you can see
can't see
things,
it. Yeah.
but you can't see it, and you may not have contacts because of the lack of comms. So you're not getting a Lahaina fire report. You're looking at Kula. That's what you can see when you're in Kahului. You can see Kula. You see
Mm.
Haleakala Mountain here, and like, you might
Mm.
just be going about your day, just being busy. And I
Wow.
mean, God be with them, man.
Yeah. No, it's horrible. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens there. We'll see what the authorities say, and and what they come up with to explain that one. Now we don't have a lot of time left here, but I just want to get into this whole thing with BlackRock and Vanguard, and like the real estate issue there, because you were saying too that like a lot of older folk were in shelters after their homes burned down, and then you know they started getting harassed by um
I don't know the exact parties, but I have a friend that, like, right out of the gate, like, he was getting, the normal spammy type emails, or the phishing emails, and that's happening. There's
mm,
terrible individuals that are smaller. I don't think that big play is happening just yet. Like, it's happening, maybe it's brewing under the surface, but I don't think that they're like directly going to people who are like, let's buy your house. I think that they're smart enough to understand those optics.
mhm,
Whereas the phishing
right.
individuals that are like, hey, give me your mortgage
Got it.
account, give me your
Got
social
it. Got
insurance
it.
number. We're going to help you, get all your paperwork done. I think, and those people are in shock. That's why they need an advocate,
Mhm.
like, or advocates, of course. Like, not one person can do it. That they need people to look out for them. But the big plays are probably the FEMA play,
Mhm.
and God knows what people are signing there. I haven't looked at it, but I don't trust it at all.
Right.
Um,
Well, and there's the other thing too, where there's a lot of reports that went out saying that a lot of aid was blocked unless it was from FEMA or Red Cross or these kind of institutional
oh
organizations.
yeah, yeah, and people are people are on the margins. Like, I think that should be clarified, and I should just say that is like, for people that don't understand Maui, you think that maybe there's a bunch of millionaires living in some town
Mm.
and they're all like loaded, and you're like, oh, well, whatever. It's just some rich dude that, like, he's fine. He'll just like go to his other house in like Idaho or something on the lake. It's not like that. These people are longtime locals. It's workforce housing. Like, if you looked at the way the fire, like what it destroyed, what it didn't destroy, you're like, these are multi-generational homes, like local families, like longtime Filipino families, longtime, like workers out there that, so there's old houses and there's also new houses like 2016 era builds that are workforce housing that was contentious, and all that's gone. If you look at it with any lens of, speculation or skepticism,
Right.
sorry,
Yeah.
you can't help but say, why did this town burn? And why did these houses burn? They're concrete. So you're like, oh, they're older. That's why they burn, because they're, shoddy builds that are like really
Mm.
old. And you're like, what about all these new houses? And what about this new development that's open air? The trusses are still there. There's no roofing. Like,
Yeah.
how did it not burn down?
Wow. Yeah,
It's right
it's
there.
strange. It's strange. I mean, there's a lot of questions, and some people are going down some really strange rabbit holes. And my view is just I'm not going to dismiss any of the stuff out of hand. We'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens a little bit. But at the same time, we can't let this thing go, because look, in the West right now, all across the West, there's a real agenda at play where they want to dispossess the middle class from their assets.
Oh, yeah.
And whether they cause a disaster to happen, or whether they just take advantage of a disaster to make that happen. It is happening, and it's not just Maui, it's everywhere. Like you see all these fires everywhere. A lot of that is arson. A lot of
Oh,
that is
yeah.
arson, and that plays into the climate change agenda, and they want to have climate lockdowns. And also, because of climate change, they want to use that as a reason why we should, why these Western, like the US and Canada, why these nations have to
Mhm.
accept all these immigrants, right?
For sure.
Because they're living in these hot countries, and then they need, right? So there's this agenda at play, and
Can I
we
touch
can't
on
let this
something
go.
with climate change here? I figured that we just go to the hurricane real quick. That hurricane
Yeah, we got
was
about 2 minutes right now, so
sure. I'll make it quick. That hurricane
yeah.
was 700 miles southwest of Maui. So the Hawaiian Island chain's up here, hurricanes down here, 700 miles away. It was about 135-mile-an-hour winds. What happened to Kona? What happened to Pearl Harbor? What happened to
Hmm.
Waikiki?
Hmm.
Nothing.
Wow.
And the winds would have been going up
Yeah.
towards Lahaina, which is the harbor there. The
Yeah.
winds on that day were going down towards the harbor. The fire was going down. It makes no sense. And usually in hurricanes, there's rain
Hmm.
or there's surf or there's swell. None of that was there. So when people think, hurricane, they're worried about the winds, and then it's downgraded to a tropical storm. You're like, okay, we're going to get some rain in Hawaii. Every single person that I've spoken to that's lived here for decades, they've never seen just dry wind.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and the climate people will be like, well, that's
Yeah.
the
Of
new
course.
normal.
Of course. And they love this. They love this, right?
It's hard. Um, like, so in 2019, it's hard not to see so many things that you're just like, okay, of course they did it, or of course it was arson, or of course the fire was on purpose. And I would have assumed, like, we have a large homeless population out here. So you have people that are like, doing meth in their cars, or they've got like a campfire and it gets out of hand. But in 2019, my mom and we got stuck in Kihei in some pretty big fires. And I think that was June of 2019 when she was visiting. And there was fires in Lahaina as well at the time. And I don't know if that was the same day, but Kihei had like a major fire. And this is kind of in like the Kahului Valley, the road into Kihei. And all that brush after, and since I've moved back to Maui, there's a company called Maui Pono or Mahi. Is it Maui Pono? I think it's Mahi Pono. I might be wrong there, but they've got like a tentative lease on all this land, and I don't know how long this lasts, but they have, lemon trees and this whole ag thing going, and everybody here, their opinion is that it's the foot in the door to development in the future. So it's like,
Mhm.
oh, we're going to do sustainable practices
Wow.
in the Kahului Valley now that the sugarcane is all gone. And mind you, this sugarcane was burned for years. That's part of the process, right? With sugarcane. So these massive fields of sugarcane up and down in that valley were burned every year. Controlled burns, no major city
Mm.
fires, no nothing like that. All of a
Mm.
sudden, the sugarcane industry dies in, I don't know, like 2016 to 2018, somewhere around there. And now there's this, this unmanaged grassland, shrubland. Now
Wow.
it's not sugarcane anymore. And there's a huge fire risk. And I mean, it could have been anything that would have caused it. It could be a homeless guy smoking crack.
Mhm.
It could be somebody that started a fire, and that happens. They torch vehicles here. Like it looks like Lebanon here sometimes. There's like torch vehicles on the side of the road, and they put a sticker on it, and then it stays there for a month, and then finally somebody removes it. But in 2019, when my mom and I got stuck in Kihei, we were looking at the fires, and I'm like, oh, we'll just, like, I was taking her on a date, and we drove into Kihei, and then we just got stuck there. And that could have happened over there. That's terrifying to think. I was like, oh, we're by the ocean. We'll just jump in the ocean if things get sideways. But all that land, it was like perfectly convenient for all of that land to now be leased by Mahipono. And now they've got, all of their ag lines. So all of their, what's it called? Why am I, the ag water lines, feeding all these different trees. And you could say that's beautiful. At least they're doing something
Right.
great with the land. But you all know, or we all know, that those trees are coming down for
Mhm.
development as soon as they get the green light. And that it's just like a foot in the door type situation. And anyway,
Yeah.
that's a 2019 fire. And everybody
Right.
understands that there's a bunch of like fuckery happening there.
Right. And
So
that's interesting because you have a population there that is sort of awake to, what is going on, with that kind of strategy. And maybe I'm just spitballing, but maybe that's why you want to block the roads off, right?
yeah. But the population here is also chill, though. I mean, a lot of people move here to turn the news out. I moved here to try and tune it out. Like,
Mm.
I try not to pay attention. And, the night before the fires, Monica, my wife, and I were like, we're going to just do like a media fast. And then all of a sudden, we're like,
Wow.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we live in Hawaii. We don't need to pay attention to what's going on in the
Yeah.
world. All of a
Yeah, I
sudden,
know. It's I feel that too because I moved to Mexico and what I like, you know, uh is the fact that I don't need to be like I don't know what's going on with the politics here and I don't care. Um and there's a real temptation to just you just want to live a quiet life. But
so bad.
we're not in that era now. Like we're just
No,
not because
no,
they're
you
gonna
can't hide.
literally steal the land out from under you and you will it's like a feudal system that they want to create.
Yeah.
And if you don't pay attention, you're going to be paying rent. You're not going to own anything. You'll be happy, ostensibly.
Mhm.
Um, you'll just be paying monthly to stay alive to BlackRock or whatever these people are, and they're going to own your ass. So we can't afford to we can't afford to like entertain these notions of like I'm just gonna fuck off somewhere and not pay attention because they're gonna be everywhere. They're coming everywhere, and we have to push back. We have to push back as in whatever way we can. Right. That's why we're having this conversation. Look, I don't like podcasts. I don't like talking on camera, like I said before, but this
Probably
is
not that guy either.
important. This is important.
So
Yeah, like we have to do this. We have to get the word out and get people to wake up and they need to pay attention to what's going on around them and not just around them. It's global now, right? It's everywhere.
I was thinking about that. I mean, obviously, we saw what happened to the Canadian truckers, and you have like good men, and this is what I see and I worry about in Hawaii. You've got good, capable, strong men, and you're seeing that in the recovery efforts, especially out of the gate. Like all the guys um, that you're seeing are solid guys, but you want to put guys like us on our knees. Like, look what happened with the truckers. You
Mm.
economically wipe them out. You have people
Yep.
that are living on the margins just trying to support their family. So, take you, for example, me, for example. If we can't put a roof over our wife's head, we can't get food for our kids. If you're on the margins, like
Mm.
what kind of fight do we have? And that's
Yeah.
why I really think, and I've been saying it to my friends out here. I mean, a lot of people really struggle with crazy rents. And I'm like, we just need to stick together and look out for each other. And I don't, I'm
Mm.
saying like some communal system or communism or anything, but if somebody's hurting, let's find a way to help them
Right.
and keep them in the fight. Otherwise, if you're just like, dude, I can't think about that. I got a $4,000 a month rent.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like normal actually out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, dude, I got to figure out a way to work. And you got people like going back to what, might be happening down the gate or down the pipe is you've got people that, let's say they had like a $3,500 mortgage or $4,000 mortgage that they got in 2016, 2017 at workforce housing. And they're covered for rent up to the tune of say 2,500 to 3,000, but market rents are 4 or 5. Now all of a sudden their overhead is like 8 to 9, and they're getting rental coverage for like 3 to 4, and they don't have a job.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like, how long are people going to last in that situation, and how much fight do they have? They're going to be like, I got to look after my family. I'm moving to Nevada, or I'm moving
Yeah.
to LA, or not LA, but like somewhere
Right.
cheaper,
Yeah.
Arkansas or something. And
Yeah.
it's like that's a thing that like I'm really blessed in the sense that my work is detached from this place, but I don't know. I'm trying to make up for that, like not being part of this community in that way by being um, hopefully helpful in other ways. But man, like seeing a guy hurting, like, or on his knees with just like day to day life, and
Hmm.
now with like
Yeah.
no job or no income, it we got to keep him in the fight. Otherwise,
We have
it's over.
to. They want us all dependent, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's that great reset agenda, right? We have to be dependent. Just watch your Netflix.
Getting your
Yeah.
COVID money, your
I,
stimmy
I'm
checks.
yeah, I'm just thinking, because in 2020, there was it's like an email that got leaked ostensibly, and it was a meeting that the Liberal Party cabinet or whatever in Canada had about how to proceed with the whole pandemic thing, like the whole agenda. And now this is November 2020 or like October 2020 when I saw this, and I'm like, this sounds crazy, but it actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So because of the pandemic, there's going to be all this debt, this household debt, which in Canada, as you know, is a huge problem, right? Huge problem. And and people are going to struggle to make ends meet, and they won't be able to like service their debt and all this stuff and paid back. So and then the whole nation itself is in debt as well, right? So what's going to happen is there's going to be a world debt reset program run by some like internationalist organization like the IMF. But and you can sign up to this as a citizen, but in exchange you forfeit all your assets, and then you have to take the vaccine, so your vaccine pass is valid, and then you can be a member of society and you can partake in society. Those who don't will have to go to a camp because blah 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 blah, right? All this stuff. So,
Yeah.
and I'm just, I remember thinking at the time, like, yeah, if you say this to most people, they're gonna laugh at you and all that, and but it makes sense. It's plausible, and that email itself may be fake for all we know, but that plan that was laid out, it's true. It's like vaguely true. I think that is what they're going for. What's happening in Maui now, it makes sense that it falls into that same kind of plan because your house burns down. You know,
Good job.
your job's gone. You're completely helpless now, and
Oh, for
these
sure.
people are going to come in to help you, but there's a price tag, right? There's a catch,
Yeah, the
and
fine print is going to be there, and I think that with Maui in particular, I've always thought that this is the most beautiful place in the world. I could live anywhere. I've got a few passports, and I could live anywhere
mm,
with our business, and this is the place that I want to raise my kids. And this whole island, I think, is at play because I'm in Kihei yesterday, which is a big tourist hub in Paia, where I drive by every day. The last 2 days, on a Friday at like 1:30, I'm driving through town in Paia. Not one shop had one person walking in or walking out. the Paia Bay Fish Market,
Wow.
which is this like awesome burger joint where people like are lineups out the door.
Hmm.
Just, a few people sitting in the tables, and these people, these businesses that rely on tourism, like all these owners, all these employees, like
Yep.
they're they may not be on the margins, um, the way we were talking about, in the sense of like they can't pay their rent, but they can't pay their mortgage now,
Hmm.
and they may have a bit more room, but eventually, and that's what happens in 6 months when you have this stigma with Maui. It's like, I'm not going there. That place is dangerous, and nobody wants to come to Maui anymore. And I understand letting Lahaina like grieve and staying out of the way and not gawking at it like some ass. And
Hmm.
we shouldn't do that. But all these people that rely on tourism,
Hmm.
and maybe the paradigm needs to shift, and we'll leave that to God. But like the reality right now is these people that rely on tourism in Kihei, these people, like I have a friend, he's looking at getting another job. He's a bartender at a nice restaurant out here, and he's looking at getting another job to work like 5 hours in the mornings before his kids are up. And it's just like the cascade, the dominoes with all this. It's like people are like, either there's going to be an exodus and people are like, we can't make it out here,
Hmm. Hmm.
or people are going to start to foreclose or lose everything
Yep.
if they try to hold on. It's like, how long can you hold on to that grip? Like you and I
Hmm.
were talking about, you want to put a man on his knees, cripple
Hmm.
him economically,
Right.
take his ability to feed his family,
Yeah.
and then he's like, I'm out. I'm going to go find something better. And then
Yeah.
he's gone. He's not in
Right.
the fight. And that's what I see happening here. And that's why my group of friends, I'm like, what can we do
Hmm.
collectively? What can we do together to help? And I need a bigger network. We all do. And so many
Yeah.
guys like us, we just want to go it alone. We don't ask for help.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's very true. Something I've noticed in my own life as well over the last 2, 3 years is the value of a network,
Yeah.
and that's something that we really need to, because the last few decades in the West, we don't need anybody, right? Like you're self sufficient, or so you
Yeah.
think, and there's a lot of pride, which I understand as well. I have that as well, where you just don't want to ask for help, right? But we're going into a period of time now. We're actually in a period of time right now. It just got started where we are going to have to rely on each other. We have to build communities with people that are like-minded. We have that here in Mexico because a bunch of people flocked here with COVID, and uh, yeah, it's an important thing to do, right?
That's
And
when I first heard about you. You were kind of sounding the alarm in Canada and talking about going there. And I'm like, yeah, this guy gets it. He knows what's going on. And my family's all back in the lower mainland. And I'm like,
mhm,
guys, got to get out. Like, this is
right,
getting sideways. And thank God they pulled back a bit, but it could have
yeah.
gone, they could have just kept going. And I think they're eventually, it's like that line doesn't go back, it just stops and
Right.
then it goes forward
Yeah, it
later.
stops, because they want you to get acclimatized to it, and
Exactly.
it's the frog in boiling water analogy. It's such a tired
Yeah.
and cliched analogy, but it's so absolutely true. Okay, I'm recording. Okay, all right. We just had a little bit of a glitch there. I think the feds are in our computers and they want to shut this down.
Hi, feds.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this guy in Maui. Last night you actually sent me a few videos of this guy. His name is Eric West. I think he's a realtor there.
Yeah, he is.
At least one of the good ones. And he's been going around and just documenting everything and talking to locals there, and he's doing a lot of good work. So I want to shout him out, Eric West. I'll put his link in a post, I guess, on X. And if people want to donate money, he's got a website, which if you want to donate money, that's a place to do it, because you don't want to send money to Red Cross or FEMA or whatever, these institutional organizations. You want to send it, you want to send it to the people directly, and he's got that
Yeah.
set up. So I'll make sure to do that. Drop
He's
that
doing
link.
great work out here. I mean, there's a video of him 2 days after the fire, the day before I went into town. And I'm telling you, it was treacherous out there. Like I felt, in way over my head. And this guy was booting around with his kids on a dirt bike, like
Yeah.
for over an hour through every part of town. And I'm just like, that's gnarly and good for you for getting this footage.
Yeah.
It was something else.
But you know what's funny is you were saying too that right now they're not allowing people to even fly drones, over the
Yeah.
burn area. So you need to get a permit to do it, and they won't give out those permits. And I
Yeah.
just saw a tweet this morning, I think, where like FEMA and I think FEMA is asking like first responders who are in the burn area not to post photos or videos. So it's like, what, why? I mean, they may have like a fine reason for that, but it just, again, if you add it to all these weird coincidences and these weird signs, it just seems more and more like a cover up again. Like they don't want the word to get out. They want to manage what gets out.
It is fascinating. I mean, the first time you and I talked was probably, I think it was on the Saturday after the Tuesday fire. So it was like 4 days after. And I think that's the first time we spoke. And what was I gonna say there? I was telling you that they were gonna like really like just lock it down. And
Mhm.
I was so surprised that they were like, okay, well, we're gonna let people in. And then they started opening it back up, but they did it in like they've got fences with big blackout curtains, like
Mhm.
this vinyl fabric that's just laid out. It's like, 7, 8 feet high. And maybe it's so the tourists can go to Kaanapali and not have to see this graveyard on their
Mhm.
way. Because the only way to get to Kaanapali is to go through Lahaina, right?
Right.
And maybe that's it, or maybe they're just, you know, they don't want people to see the recovery efforts and they want to give people some privacy. And I
Mhm.
get that too. There's a strong argument, and that's the argument that's like, oh, we'll back off then. But
Right.
that there's a bunch of stuff happening, and like there's stuff that doesn't make sense either. It's like I've watched a couple videos of, and this is like right after, like a couple days after, where Front Street's now cleared out. So all those cars in that kind of kill box that we were talking about that are stuck on Front Street, it's all cleared out. And there's a street sweeper on the side, sweeping the side of the sidewalks. And you're like, why would there be a street sweeper,
Mhm.
like one of those vehicles that has the
Yeah.
brush,
Yeah.
sweeping the curb? Like, why would they be sweeping a curb? You've got destroyed everything left and right, and there's going to be material going everywhere. Are they doing it to protect other vehicles coming in? I guess that's a good argument. Are there nails on the road from roofing and whatever? That makes sense. But there's no possible way that that material on those properties that are torched aren't going to blow on back onto the road. It just seemed to me, it seemed like an exercise in futility at best. And at worst, it was like, what are they doing? Like, why is there a
Right.
street
Yeah.
sweeper on this road? Like, why is
Again,
that?
it comes down to that same argument: is it incompetence or is it malice, right? And
And I don't know. Like every
and
time I
look,
see
and if this happened like in 2005 or something, you could say, okay, it's incompetence, blah 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 blah.
yeah,
Like, as I was saying to you on the phone earlier, this, we're in a post-COVID world now, and we saw
what they
very
did.
transparently how they will lie, and they will literally try to kill you. All right. When it came out that, oh, you know what, if you just take ivermectin, even the horse paste, right?
Mm.
Because you have the horse paste, but you also have the ivermectin pills, and this stuff, it will cure COVID. Okay, we're going to ban this. You can't even talk about it. We'll censor you. Take the vaccine. That's going to make you even sicker. I mean, like, it is malice. There is malice at play,
Oh yeah,
and the malice, it benefits from the incompetence, right? So it's a layered thing. You have people maybe on the ground who just follow orders, right? I'm just following orders, man.
hmm,
And that's the incompetence level. But that is relied on by the higher levels, and the higher you go, it gets more and more malicious. That's what we're dealing with here. I've got no doubt in my mind that at the higher levels, it is very malicious, and they want to reshape the world in how they want. Right? They want to depopulate, and they want to own all the assets. They want to make you subservient. They
yeah.
want to create like
Subjugate,
a
depopulate, all
right.
that kind of stuff.
It's all
Um,
happening. It's and we have to talk about this. It's not it's not comfortable to talk about it. A lot of people, they, like we were saying earlier, they just want a peaceful life somewhere, but you have no choice in this anymore because
Mhm.
you are the target now, and you have to fight back. If you don't fight back, we're all dead. We're all going to die, right? So,
Mhm.
and I've got kids, you've got kids. I want to leave a world that is not completely in the shitter for them, right?
Yeah.
And
And what does that
ideally,
look like? I've been trying to figure that out, like out here, like in my own circumstances on this little island. Like, what can I do that's going to move the needle? And I'm not exactly sure yet. I've really got to think that through.
right.
I got to pray about it, but I don't know. Like right now, I'm just like seeing families. I've seen a situation already where a father sent his family away after near losing them. So like running for his life
Wow.
with his kids, and like the next day the family's going to the mainland, and I'm like, dude, like the PTSD that would be associated with near losing your family, then
Mm-hmm.
having them go somewhere else just to be safe for a while, and you being on your own, as
Mm-hmm. Of
strong as a man as you may be, and you are a strong man, it's gonna play with your head.
course.
And like,
Yeah.
and I think that I don't know. I'm just trying on my end to, because I wasn't financially affected by this, I wasn't physically affected. My PTSD, I'm in shock. Like it doesn't like compute what happened to me, and it's probably going to come in waves. But I didn't lose anything. I lost a backpack. Like that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot a
Yeah.
church. I lost nothing in the grand scheme of things. But lifting up the men that can move the needle with me, or finding some ways to hold on together, because I can't do it by myself. Even if like, and I don't want to be that guy that's just like, oh well, I'll just work from home somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
This is my home, and I've never felt roots anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of
Wow.
people feel that way, but they're on the margins. It's like, how do you help them when they're living paycheck to
Right.
paycheck in like
Right.
arguably one of the most expensive, like, you and I lived in Vancouver. We know what it's like
Mm.
to just try and make it. Imagine
Oh yeah.
now.
Look, I wasn't even in Vancouver. I mean, it's insane what's happening there. I was way north. I was about 8 hours north by car. And I loved it there. But you know what? I didn't leave, because it was too expensive. I left because of, it's a long story. I've known for years, like the way things are going in Canada, that I would have to leave at some point.
Yeah.
But now that I look back, I would not have survived financially if I had stayed anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what they do,
So
man.
brutal.
They again, like we were saying a few times now, they want to make you dependent on them, and if you die, that's even better for them. Um, so uh, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about with this
Um,
situation.
I took some notes the other day because I didn't want to sound like I was just, muttering at the sky or something like that with all the things
Right.
that are that are wild. But we talked about the hurricane. We talked about how it didn't make any sense. The wind patterns, the weather didn't make any sense.
Mm,
Um, the fires early in the morning. Um, there was one in Kula, one in Lahaina. We did talk about that. System failures, obviously, you could go over that forever. We talked about the police chief
mhm.
and the heat, the missing people. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and we talked about what burned and what didn't. And there's going to be a lot of people speculating. I'm hearing a lot of stuff about blue didn't burn. There's
Right.
umbrellas. There's blue shirts.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of that. That
Yeah,
sounds
me neither. I mean, I just put a video up on it today. Like I just reposted it, and it's like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I mean, there's people saying,
I
"Oh, it's a directed energy weapon," and I'm like, okay, like, yeah. I mean, we should talk about it, I guess. I mean, it sounds insane, but like these things do exist. Like
yeah.
it's not invented out of thin air. But if that is true, I mean, now we're dealing with a level of malice that is like it's strong even for 2023, right? So I don't know. I
Very
think that
possible.
yeah,
I didn't see any of that. And I mean, I would, I think that if there was something, I could see like them purposely starting a fire, or them, or like, having some like cracked out dude
Yeah,
in
it's a lot easier if you're gonna orchestrate this like and actually cause it. There's a lot easier ways to do it than some laser beam from space or whatever. So,
exactly.
but yeah.
But there were a lot of explosions that night that you could chalk up to propane tanks, but
Mm,
a lot of the propane tanks, they have, temperature release valves, so they blow out when something
mm,
hits a certain temperature. And when I was in my buddy's neighborhood, when went through there, I did see some failures. So the tank blew out on the side, so you could see like a huge piece of metal that was bent out, so it
mm,
blew up, or
mm.
blew up, like not totally like shattered, blew up, but like
Yeah,
it relieved the pressure by, um, exploding there. And then other ones, the pressure relief or temperature relief valve just shoots all that material up, right?
mhm.
But like the level of explosions that night that people had described, it doesn't make sense. So you're like, was there like a bunch of drones with thermite or something like that? I have
Right,
no
right.
idea.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like that's
yeah.
what some people think, and that's very possible. And like, how did it get so hot? You could say, okay, it's like a leaf blower on a fire. Like there's so much fuel, so much oxygen. Very possible. I don't understand fire, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, like, that's the thing too. Like, there's a lot we don't know, but your gut instinct is just telling you something's not right.
yeah. We need all
Something's
the
not right.
people that are intelligent, more intelligent than me, that have more
Right.
time than me, like
Yeah.
a couple of guys with kids.
Yeah. Well,
uh,
that's the thing because, like,
we
again,
can't do it alone.
we're in a time now. You can't believe the experts. Like, you're supposed to be able to rely on the experts because you're not an expert. Like, when in 2020, when the in January, with the virus, when that first hit, I mean, I'm not a virologist, I'm not an immunologist, but the people who are, they're bought and paid for, right? They're the ones on TV, they're the ones, who have the mouthpiece, and they're giving you bad information, right? And
Yeah,
they're hurting you along. So now there's this huge, there's no more trust in society anymore. So now you have to become the expert on this stuff, and
yeah,
people are not qualified for that. And so now my position is like, okay, well, I know that I don't know, because a lot of people are just ignorant and arrogant about it. Oh, it was this, it was that. Okay, well, we don't really actually know this. We do know something's not adding up. We do know that these people are bought and paid for. You can't trust them. So now you're in
mhm,
a position where, like, I just don't know. I'm just not believing anything, and I just have to be okay with just not knowing. But now, based on that, you have to make decisions for your own life, right?
oh, for sure.
And
Like,
it's a tough position to be in, but that's what we got to work with now.
but we talked about this at the beginning. It's like those who um, disobeyed survived. Is that what
Yeah,
we were saying?
yeah,
And the meme around that, it's like, okay, I don't know what happened. I don't know if they were like space lasers or whatever people are
right.
talking about. I'm going to assume that it was probably simpler than that, because it
Hmm.
very well could have been, and it could have
Yeah.
just been a down power line. It
Hmm.
very well could have been, and
Yeah.
a level of dominoes with incompetence possible. But
Yep.
what I know is malice or incompetence at this point. It's like, you can't, if your gut is telling you these guys, like, I'm in a dangerous position, I need to get out of here. And there's
Right.
people like you see driving around, not getting any warnings or being herded
Hmm.
into in dangerous areas. Like, you have to trust, somehow we got to break that in our psyche, where because we're, good citizens, and like
Right.
we hope society is moral, that we just do what we're told, and
Hmm.
it's going to be okay. It's
Yeah, we
like, maybe
gotta, man. That's
not, man.
we have to break that. You're absolutely right. And it's like, malice or incompetence. It's like the difference between fascism and communism. On the ground, it doesn't matter. Your ass is going to a concentration camp, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that a good rule to live by in 2023 and going forward is exactly that. It's those who disobey survive.
Yeah.
That's just how it
And
is. Just
trust, you got to trust your, well, I don't know, when I say that, it's like break that psyche and trust your gut. I mean,
yeah,
somehow we're going to have to understand that, okay, I'm on my own more than I thought I was.
yeah,
I need to develop community to alleviate that. But at the same time, when push comes to shove and there's like a very scary situation like these people went through, there's
Mm.
a good chance that listening to them is not the right choice.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah, because
there's
they want to cover their own ass too, right?
sure, you could say that this is irresponsible to say that. Like some people would be like, well, that guy shouldn't be saying don't listen to first responders. This guy is an arrogant ass for saying that. And you could say that about me right now, but
Mm.
look at all those people that were running around in circles in Lahaina
Yeah.
as a cyclone of fire was, honing in on them. And you're like, how can you
Yeah.
in good faith trust you and your family to the people that are on the ground
Right.
that either don't know
Yeah.
or I just
Yeah. No, look, it's
couldn't do it.
we have to, I mean, as cliche as it sounds or whatever, I mean, or stupid as it sounds to some people, we have to connect with God on an individual level and
Yes.
trust in God and the people around you that you know are good people. Build that community, have faith in God, and then go with your gut because your gut will tell you. I can't even tell you how many times that has saved me from a lot of trouble. Just go with your gut. When I was in BC with the wildfires in 2017, we got evacuated, but we left the day after they actually sent out the evacuation order because what happened is they sent out the order and everybody started leaving. There's only two ways out of that town that I was in. One way was blocked, going north. It was blocked. So everybody's going south, and it's just a traffic jam. And I mean, this is BC. This is like it's interior BC. There's not a lot of roads, so it's a traffic jam for like 300 kilometers, right? And there's
Yeah,
fires
you have 100
everywhere.
mile. Was it 100 mile in one direction and it was like Prince
Yeah,
George?
and Prince George the other direction. So
Yeah.
the way to Prince George was blocked off. So everybody's going down to like 100 mile or whatever. And we're just like, no, we're not doing this. So we stayed. And we get people knocking on the doors, at night, like, what are you doing? We're staying. We're not going anywhere. You know, and then the next day, because I've got a wife and young kids, and the air quality is really bad and you're just breathing the shit in all day. So I wanted to leave. And the next day, lo and behold, northbound opened up and we went we went 3 hours north of Prince George and the road was absolutely clear. There was not a single car on the road and we could just drive. Right.
Yeah.
So many times, yeah, not doing what everybody else is doing is a good decision, but it's your decision. And if it goes wrong, it's on your head. So you have to live with that as well. But anyway,
For sure.
yeah,
Well,
that's the world we live in now. You can't have faith in the authorities. They have their own motivations, whether it's malice or just they just want to cover their own asses, and they want to minimize liability and all that stuff, right? So
and just like on that note, before anybody that sees this online thinks that I don't think there's good cops out there. I know there's good cops out there. I'm friends
oh, for
with good
sure, yeah.
cops, and there are people that would lay their lives down for you.
Hmm.
But there is a lot of incompetence as well, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of cops that aren't so good.
No, well,
So
and that's another huge conversation we could have. But I know a lot of police officers as well, because my my brother in BC was RCMP. He had actually quit during COVID, right? He's in Mexico
makes
here as
sense.
well. Um, the institution itself is rotten.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
lot of good cops, but they're getting pushed out. We saw this in the U.S. with the military vaccine mandate. The ones who
Mhm.
refused, they got dishonorably discharged, right? So who's left? Is yes men, right, and order takers, right? So, and I mean, now I think it's been rescinded or whatever. I don't know if the story is there, but it just they actually did that for a while, and that shows you, what they're willing to do, right? And with the RCMP as well, I can tell you, I've got lots of stories of good cops who are ethical and honorable men getting pushed out. They're getting
Oh
pushed
yeah.
out. So what's left now? And the U.S. too, with all these Black Lives Matter protests. The people who remain, the cops who remain, are either psychos or yes men. That and it's increasingly going down that route. And
They're
what's that
one
going to look
high
like? Sorry.
investigation from being pushed out. Like most of the cops that I know that are good are one internal affairs investigation, one shooting
Yep.
that was justified,
Yep.
like where, the governor's like, okay, well, we're going to investigate 50 shootings and we're going to assume that the police officers were guilty. And we're not talking about necessarily a kill or anything. We're just
Right.
saying like we had to draw their weapon.
Yeah.
And it's like people, good cops that are defending themselves or defending other people, like they're walking a tightrope.
Yeah, they
And
are. And it's a lot of stress. And, it's not just the cops, it's every institution. So, and this is why we're saying those who disobey survive, because the institutions are rotting away in terms of morality and just doing the right thing, and competence as well, because, there's a correlation between these yes men and incompetence, right? There is a correlation there. And it's a bad mix. And it's a liability to your person now to have too much faith in the authorities, right?
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying obviously, as a rule to not follow, the authorities and to not obey them, but just judge every situation for yourself.
For
Make your
sure.
make your own
Exactly that.
decision.
Exactly that. It's like,
Right.
don't just be like difficult for no reason. There's a
Exactly.
very
Yeah.
possible chance it's the right thing to do. But
Yeah.
if you're like having some serious doubt, or if you're like, we're gonna die if we do this, don't be the
Exactly.
person that's just trying to like, fit in the cookie cutter or whatever, and just like, you know, be herded wherever. Like if you don't trust something, you
Yeah.
need to step up now, and somehow you need to break that psyche that we've had our whole lives to
Mhm.
be relatively compliant. When you know that
Yeah.
something's wrong, you're like, I ain't doing that.
Right. Look, this is not the world our parents grew up in, right?
No.
It's a totally different world now. It's not the world that we grew up in as kids, even. So we have to adapt. You got to stay flexible. And this is again your connection with God. A lot of people say this because it sounds so like super spiritual and enlightened, but it's a very practical thing. Your connection with God is it matters, and especially in these days now, because we no longer can rely on the authorities. Um,
And you can't run away because
and you
the
can't.
enemy will devour you wherever you go.
Right.
So people that are, running to Idaho, I get it. People that are going to like more conservative states, I get it. But I mean, I'm a Christian, and I just figure I might as well be in a place like it.
Right.
I might as well be in a place where I can be useful.
Yeah, you have
And
to be where you're supposed to be.
yeah, and this feels like it. I'm just praying that I can be useful and hopefully competent enough to keep myself alive long enough to
Yeah,
figure
man.
out a way to be actually useful. I don't know.
Well, and you've actually taken in a family, I think you were saying as well, with the
We
fires.
did. We ended up finding them a rental. We were lucky to do that. We don't have a big place, but we had a family of six with us, and we were just running around. At the beginning, that's kind of what it was, so overwhelming that all we could do was like, okay, let's focus on at least like we're a family. We can help one family or
Mm.
one couple or one person. So it's like, get this couple a car, get them some cash in their jeans, get this family a bridge to
Mhm.
get to the next
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
I would have kept, they were amazing. I would have kept them as long as they wanted, months and months and months. But
Yeah.
they obviously wanted to get back to routine as well. And we were able to, we found them a rental that's like perfect, and it's affordable for them, and they're uniquely like, that's going to be really tough. It's like, okay, well, if everybody helps the family, there's not enough rentals. There's 2,000 houses gone on this island, and there's already a housing crisis. So eventually there's not going to be enough chairs, and that's really sad. And when I was speaking with my friends, I'm like there's going to be a shortage. Like the money might come, but there's going to be no houses, and definitely there's going to be like job
Right.
issues. So that's really tough. But as far as helping, like you were on the money when you're talking about Eric West. I mean, going to individuals or specifically in person, if you live here, and be like, what do you need? What's hurting? What's hard? Do you need help with paperwork? Do you need help with some cash? Do you need a car? Do you need a place to sleep?
Yeah.
If you can do that for people out here, that's just so huge.
Yeah.
And as far as people that are not here, you can look for hopefully reputable people to kind of filter you to be like, this family needs something, this family might need something. And it's really hard with GoFundMe and Venmo and all that. It's like there's so much that people are like, I don't even know what's legitimate or not.
Mhm.
And I can see a lot of people getting lost in that. And then a lot of people like us that aren't used to asking, we're not big social media people. It's like, I don't want to do a GoFundMe for myself. I
No.
know a guy that's like that. I don't want to do a GoFundMe for
Right.
myself. And they won't ask when they need help. And that's
Yeah.
where, going back to my friends out here, I'm like, you need to ask. I've been in COVID, my business got crushed. I had two kids, two babies born, and went to NICU. And I told one of my friends, I'm like, he was really grateful. And he's like, I can't believe you're doing all this for me. I'm like, if you sat at this table with all the people that helped me over the last 3 years, the people God put in my life, you would know that you're not in debt to me. I'm not in debt to them. We're all in debt to God. Like,
Mm.
it's just,
Amen. Yeah.
it's, and I've been lifted up when I was in a real rough shape, and that's all we can do here. So
Amazing. Yeah. That's the way forward, man.
yeah,
That's the way
so
forward. So thanks for setting an example on that. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about. I think,
no,
for
it's
people
I think
watching
we covered.
this,
I think
yeah, it's a good overview.
hopefully there's a lot more like people like that want to see, the nitty gritty of it all. Like there's some obviously crazy footage, and I don't have it, but you can see it just as easily as I can. And being on the ground doesn't really make much of a difference versus seeing those videos, because I was on the ground.
Mhm.
It doesn't look real. If you're a scientist,
Wow.
maybe, and you're like sifting through like, I don't know, thermite or whatever you might find,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a different story. But for the average person like myself, like I don't, yeah, being there is just poisonous and is not worth it. Hopefully we can document as much as possible and pay attention, like the people that have that time, pay attention to where's the money coming from, where's it moving, what laws changed,
Mhm.
what's coming down the pipe, what kind of red tape is being cut for new development, what's
Yeah.
happening to the people that lost their houses, how are they going to make it,
Mhm.
what kind of alleviation do they have, if any.
Yeah.
And I think like it after, this passes the mainstream media, a lot of people are just going to get swept up like that street sweeper. Like
Mhm.
people won't know. And
Yeah.
I'm just grateful that you're willing to listen to me and talk to me, and I'm glad that people are paying attention. I'm
Yeah.
out there online. I know people
Yeah,
are
look,
paying.
it's the community, right? I mean, we have our local communities where we live physically, but we also have this online community, and the people in our circles, at least, we understand like this stuff happening in Maui. It's not isolated to Maui. It's not this one-time incident. It's happening everywhere, and we have to pay attention. We got to help each other out. So, and again, my hope with this little conversation we just had is that some people will watch it. They'll not forget about Maui. They'll do some investigation. Like some people are more inclined to do all sorts of crazy research, and they should do it because we
God
need
bless
them.
them.
We need each
God
other,
bless
right?
them.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, yeah, it's like the 4chan artists, right? We need those guys. God bless
We
them,
need
man. You're like the spine of this.
them.
And Yeah, we need to figure out what, like, we need to hold these people to account, right? And then, for people, again, I hate to get political, but it is true that in Hawaii, it's been straight Democrat for I don't know how long, many, 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 many years.
For
And
sure.
I'm not saying that if it was run, by the other party, that would have been better, because you've assholes and
Mhm.
corrupt people in the Republican Party as well. But it's good to change things up, because people get entrenched, they get comfortable, they start taking things for granted, and then they do stupid shit, right?
Yeah. Can I touch on that really quick? So, Hawaii is very heavily Democratic. And when I was talking to you about all the people that are really stepping up, so, it's one thing to say, oh, well, this state, city, whatever had it coming. Every person I saw stepping up at the beginning, going into the fire, going and bringing material into the zone, getting poisoned while they're going down there. They were all the people that don't like this government. They're saying there's some fuckery happening out here. There's bad stuff happening. And they're people just like us, people that are more conservative, right, Christian. They're hunters. The people that we're talking about are people that are closer to the land here. They're more conservative in nature. They don't like the government here. So they're people, they're not like a bunch of like crazy lefties that are like, what happened? Like my government, like, and if I have any hope in this event is that the rest of the population out here doesn't look at the government like daddy government, because at best, like, we have an absentee father as government
at best,
state of Hawaii in this country. And at worst, we have an abusive, deranged daddy government out here. So anyway, I wanted to say that the people of Hawaii, and just like the people of California or wherever, there is a good, strong group of solid people out here that we can't forget them, because they're like the airborne in these hot spots of chaos. Like, they're good people. And they just, if you want to, like we talked about, putting a man on his knees, like cripple them economically or whatever, they just need help. And they'll do a lot of work. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, it's good words, man. It's a good thought, and people need to take it to heart, and people themselves, they, and locals like that, they need to run for these local positions.
Yes.
And it doesn't even matter what party it's for, right? But local people who understand what we've been talking about, they're more likely going to be conservatives. They're more likely going to be Republicans. That's just a fact.
For sure.
But they need to step up, and they need to run for these local positions. Like the guy, who was in charge of the water being released or whatever, and he's like, oh, it's equity and whatever. Like, dude, that guy needs to. I probably shouldn't say what I think needs to happen to that guy, right? But there needs to be justice.
Leave the island. He needs to go find a new job.
Yeah, at best, right? Like, there needs to be justice. There needs to be a reckoning. Same with the pandemic and everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And but until that happens, you can have locals run for these positions.
Yeah, and I think that they will step up, and I think they'll be heard more, because I think people are going to be pretty jaded after this when they realize that the response is as bad as what led up to this whole catastrophe. People are going to be like, well, this is a disaster. Like, we can't vote for people like this. And they're going to see people that stepped up, people that rescued people, brought supplies over and over again, that type of person. And I just like you, I hope that they step up in other ways, and
amen.
And we'll see. But I think that we probably got through almost everything over those 3 attempts. So I appreciate you taking the time, and
thanks for reaching out. And I'm glad we could have this conversation. And like I said before, we'll keep an eye on the situation there. We'll monitor the situation, as the politicians like to say. But for people watching, thanks for watching. And I just want to leave you with this: those who disobeyed survived. Maintain your connection with God, improve it. You have to hone your gut instincts, because you're going to rely on that more and more as time goes on. And the people around you, build that community, and build a local network, also online, but especially locally. It's going to be crucial, in the years going forward. So
we can't do it alone. We can't. You need God first, and you need good people around you, and you should be focusing on that. And
amen. All right, man.
Well, thanks, John.
Thank you for the time. Talk soon.
Goodbye.